Ready? Ready to roll?
Sure.
Well, good afternoon, and I guess it's still morning, so we maybe get done this afternoon, and I want to thank each one of you for being here today. And before we talk a little bit about the things that are on our agenda today, I want to thank each one of you for the job you've done this session in covering this historical session. The first time in the history we were tied and spoke with most of you individually. Many of our members have here, and I want to thank you for the excellent job you do in continuing to report here from the Capitol. It's important to the citizens of Oregon. But first of all, I want to just share a little bit about some of the highlights you have in front of you. One of the most important things I think that happened this session, being tied 30-30 split on the House side and a close Senate, is that House Republicans were able to come here and have a strong ability to sit at the table and make a difference for the future of the state of Oregon. In that area, I think if you look at the budgets, and I think Dennis could give you any of the details, if you look at the budgets, that we basically have slowed the growth in spending in the state of Oregon. Most of the budgets are within the within the forecasted revenue, which is still going to be a challenge for our state. The $1.7 billion increase that we forecasted for the future, but the budgets are within that percentage. There's a few exceptions to that where those things had to be prioritized. I would want to say that one of the great things, and I'm sure Matt can give you more of that, Representative Winkard, is the education that reforms. We didn't get new chairs for you to write on. The old school chairs are still here, but we have a future to have new schools and a different type of choice in our state for parents and students that will take a little while for it to really make a difference, but there was that package of 14 bills will have a dramatic impact on the future of our state. The other, I think, really important thing that the state of Oregon citizens can be proud of is the historical agreements that were done on a bipartisan basis on the redistricting, not only on the House side, but the House and Senate side, but also yesterday reaching an agreement for a congressional redistricting plan. I think you have to go back 100 years since the last time that's been happened. That is attributed to strong leadership. We have had 6 new members on the House side, actually 9 new members, but 6 new seats. 5 of those were very strong legal minds, very strong people who kept staying at the table and working in a civil way to get those types of agreements done. And I want to give some credit to Sean Lindsay, who's not here, Representative Lindsay, who worked to help negotiate those as well. So there's a lot of good things we could talk about. I'm going to allow some of our team here to share with you some of their thoughts, and then we'll answer some questions. So thank you again for being here today.
Well, just real quickly on all of the things that Representative Cameron listed were contributed to what I think is a monumental legislative session. Something about the governor that we have and the 30-30 tie in the House led to a situation where we were able to get more done than I think either side believed was possible. And probably, from my standpoint, nothing more critical than the bold reforms that we made on education in this state. Oregon has for some time been lagging behind in joining some of the education reform movements that are going on in other parts of the state. But I think we were able to craft a package that had something in it for everyone who sees themselves as an education reformer but maybe just doesn't agree on exactly what that reform should be. You've seen in that package of bills increased accountability put on our K-12 public education system, increased accountability on our educational service districts, increased accountability on our higher education system. And frankly, when we get finished with all that is involved in 909, and I expect another piece of legislation in February, increased accountability on our early childhood learning programs as well. So throughout the entire system, an increase in accountability. We have, within the K through 12 system, created more choices for parents, and I think that by empowering parents in that way, you're going to find that that is its own accountability mechanism as well. And everyone who's running a public school in this state is going to have to be accountable to the people who send their children there, because they will have other options, and that's important. We managed to squeeze out a little additional funding for the system as well. I think, again, getting back to the accountability piece, the change we made around the appointed superintendent is going to hold this governor and all future governors more accountable for the state of our entire public education system. There are other things in the package I'm happy to answer questions about as well, but I'm convinced that you will not see this kind of education reform in one legislative session anytime soon. Stars aligned, and we were able to get some very, very important things done. And I think that Representative Cameron is correct that it will take some time. Some of the bills that we passed don't even really go to effect. The interdistrict transfer piece doesn't even really take effect until the following school year, not the one that we're about to go into in the fall. So it will take a couple of years for us to begin to see the effect of some of these bills that we passed, but I have no doubt that future generations of children will benefit from what we did here in the last 5 months. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Freeman. I represent House District 2 down in the Roseburg area. I agree with Representative Winger that the education package that was passed will be vitally important and maybe one of the most important things we did this session. But another thing that was incredibly important is the healthcare transformation. One of the largest cost drivers in the state budget is healthcare costs, and specifically the Oregon Health Authority trying to deliver health services for those that are on the Oregon Health Care Plan. We had the opportunity to probably move the ball ahead a little quicker than some would have thought, largely because of the budget crisis. The Healthcare Transformation Special Joint Committee on Healthcare Transformation was brought together to figure out a way to better coordinate the way care is delivered in our communities, and to do that in a way that eventually we'll start doing it for less money. I know there's a lot of talk about savings. I think probably a better way to describe that is how we're going to rein in the escalating cost of providing that particular kind of health care for that population. It was a fascinating process. We had many nights of meetings outside the building. For 8 weeks we had 3-hour meetings on Wednesday nights, and then we started our public hearings as a legislative committee, took testimony from literally dozens of people, written testimony from hundreds of people, and put together a bill that passed the House floor with only one dissenting vote. To put a package together and to put a bill together that would allow for the bipartisan support that it did required a lot of work, and it required a lot of understanding by members of both sides of the aisle. And at the end of the day, I do believe moving forward, the healthcare transformation bill will be one of those things that this legislative body will be known for, and this session will be known for many years to come. Very complicated issue. Many of you have talked to me about it, and I would look forward in the future to have you continue to call and visit with me about that as it works out. We have lots of interim work to do to get ready for February to pass the implementation bill so that we can start moving forward to start providing better outcomes, healthcare outcomes at a lesser cost as early as the second half of the biennium. And I would also like to thank you all for being here today. And I know Representative Dennis Richardson, the co-chair of Ways and Means, would love to visit with you.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Richardson, the Republican co-chair of Ways and Means. Would like to just remind us that this has been historic, not just in the fact that we've had a 30-30 split and we've had a co-governance model that's worked well and there's been greater cooperation than we've had in a decade, but also because we changed the way that we've budgeted. In the past, we've used the current service level model, which basically means you come into the session and the agencies come in and they say, well, here's how much we need in the future to maintain all the services we provide, and then it's up to the legislature to come as close to that number as possible, and if you don't meet it, it was a cut. where with our current governor and the agreement of the co-chairs, we focused on what did we spend in the last 2 years and what do we have available to spend in the next 2 years. So by determining an amount at the very beginning of this process, the focus was how do we craft budgets that live within the means we have available, rather than creating budgets and then say, where do we get the money to pay for them? So we started by coming up with an agreement as to what revenue we would anticipate having in the next 2 years. Then we determined a reserve amount, an ending balance that would be there as a cushion in case the revenue forecast somehow might not be accurate. And so with that, we then had an amount left that we could budget to. And that's what we've done. The governor and the legislative leaders are working toward making a change in the way that we budget in the future as well, using a strategic model rather than a current service level model. So what happens in the next 6 months will be very important as the governor, as the CEO, with Michael Jordan and others working with legislative representatives, will determine what the strategy is for the state of Oregon. What is the vision for the state of Oregon so that the agencies, as they prepare for the next budgeting cycle, will be budgeting toward accomplishing that strategy. And then in 13-15, we'll be able to see whether or not the programs, the plans, the agencies are accomplishing the strategy for Oregon. Then the key performance measures will mean something because they'll come back to the strategists and be used to say, okay, are these programs and agencies accomplishing the goal that will take us toward the vision for the state of Oregon? That type of strategic planning for the future will make a vital and an important change in the way that Oregon functions as we look toward this decade of deficits and looking at how we can budget with a long-term plan in mind rather than just getting through the next 2 years. Thank you.
So I just would summarize, there's still probably 179,000 or so Oregonians that are unemployed, and we have a lot of work to do in this state to get the private sector back to work. And one other accomplishment, I think, working with both sides of the aisle back early in session was the Federal Reconnect, where we kept $93 million in accelerated depreciation in the hands of the private sector businesses in the state of Oregon, which we know put some people to work and created some investment in this state. There's a lot of things we could talk about that we probably didn't get done that we would have liked to get done that would have added to that, but I think it's probably appropriate to just open it up for some questions if you have some, and do the best we can to answer those.
Some of your members in recent days have expressed disappointment that not more was done to further the economy. Are there any clear ideas that your caucus would get behind in the forthcoming February session?
Well, I think you can go back and look at the list of ideas that we had right when we got here. There are some very simple, you could go out there and take some tax credits for hiring people in small businesses or even go all the way to large businesses, and those particular incentives would put people to work right away, but the revenue impact is not until the next biennium or the next year. So those are the types of things we came with. We didn't get any traction on, basically on a bipartisan basis. So those ideas will stay on the table as long as we have this kind of lack of private sector growth in our state. Again, I want to remind you that this 2-year forecast is for about an 8% revenue increase, and to be able to do that, we're going to have to create some jobs in this state at a pace far faster than is being created right now. And I'm hopeful that'll happen, but I think in February, if it's not ticking up, I hope we get together and find some ways that we can work on a bipartisan basis to bring some of those up.